Oftentimes, we see the end product of a development, from that breathtaking beachfront property to that striking single-family home, or even that majestic townhouse or apartment. But have you ever considered the process before the product? It's another week of Home Sweet Home with me, your host, Candy. Let's take you on a journey from concept to reality of a development. Hi, here from Home Sweet Home.
Hi Candy.
Hi Raymond, good to see you again.
Welcome, welcome. All right, so today we're going to go through on a little tour.
This is nice.
So your safety gears, safety at all times.
Yes.
Essentially, this is our site plan.
Right.
This is the proper orientation of it.
Right.
So there's the pool right there. It's actually 1,300 square feet.
Wow, it's a good size. Raymond Grant is the project manager for this development. Now, Raymond, where exactly are we right now?
All right, right now we are in the Golden Triangle, 1 Gladstone Drive, Kingston 6.
Kingston
One
6.
of the most
Sought after.
sought after areas now for apartments especially.
Now, I want to get a complete understanding of the development of a development.
Sure.
So, the background process, all the legal things that you probably have to go through, give us a sense of what that's like.
So this project is called Richesse Chateau. It's a French concept. Richesse meaning wealth and chateau meaning like a grand manor or a castle. So we're trying to replicate that. But before we got to that point, we had to first understand if the market could accommodate such a development, if the market has a demand based on the time period that the project could be delivered to be able to satisfy. So at the end of the project, at the very least, we would have potential purchasers who would actually purchase to make the project a reality. So the process of actually doing a development like this first starts with understanding the ability of getting a buyer who has an appreciation for the types of finishing that you're going to be putting in the market. Persons who want high quality, they tend to go for smaller complexes. So what it does is that it limits the amount of persons that are residing in that one space, because on a strata development, it's really more like a communal living. So the concept here is a communal living, but you have your own designated space.
Right.
So we went about checking out, doing our research, understanding what were persons looking for. They wanted high ceilings, they wanted 10-foot ceilings, they wanted tray ceilings, they wanted recessed lighting, they wanted audio in their ceilings, they wanted speakers to project sound down, right? In addition to that, in terms of the finishing, in terms of the type of tiles. So what we did is that we went ahead and we actually imported tiles from Spain as samples and Egypt. So what we're actually bringing on the market now is something that has never been seen before. We have the ability to scope in terms of from a pool of potential purchasers, what they want. And what we are able to do based on that is actually bring the purchaser into the process to determine the finishing that they want on the units. So it's essentially tailor-made. So what we do is maintain the quality. Even though we bring the buyer in, we maintain the quality of the product that we're putting out.
So you've obviously done your market research.
Right.
What would you say is the importance of location in the development?
One of the most important factors for a developer is, will the developer be able to connect into the central sewage system? The National Environment and Planning Agency, they regulate how the urban space is expanding, right? Location has necessary elements to it. You have to be able to provide a certain amount of parking. You have to be able to provide a certain amount of amenity space for your purchasers. For a developer to be able to maximize on his output, he has to try and find a location where he can get connection to a central sewer. Because if he's not able to connect to a central sewer, then he has to set aside additional space on the property to do an on-site sewage treatment, which requires a certain amount of space by the authorities. So that automatically reduces the amount of units that a developer can get. So the location and the ability to have the sewage in particular gives the developer better opportunity to get returns on his investment. All right? So that is something that's very important, because for most of us as developers, we have to write to the National Environment and Planning Agency or the KCAC as well for them to guide us as to how many units we may get on a particular lot. Because in addition to that, there is a zoning plan that NEPA has. So in terms of what we call a habitable room ratio, that is a measurement done based on the acreage. So we go from as low as, in the more rural areas, we'd say like 20 habitable rooms per acre. So that's the maximum amount of habitable rooms that you may get, on average 30. But as you get closer into the heart of the city, for example in New Kingston, you can get up to 150 habitable rooms per acre. So again, the location element is very important there.
Now, living in these modern times, what kind of considerations do you have to make when building these things?
You have to understand that the market is competitive. It's not a case where you're the only developer out there. You are putting out a product. That product has to compete with other products, so you have to ensure that your product is a step ahead, or that there's a minimum bar that you set, that you maintain that throughout the process. So in doing development, no terrazzo. We have to go for the exquisite tiles. And even if you are doing a lower end development that caters to persons of a lower median income, you still have a minimum that you'll go. For example, for our units, all our units are pre-fitted with services for laundry, air conditioning, and all the essential services, the cable, the internet, and so on. Every unit has access, right, to 400 gallons of water.
Okay, wow.
Right? That's run separately for them. So if for whatever reason the National Water Commission is down for a day or two, you can get that.
So this is the modern day version of a tank?
Essentially. Okay. But the tank is not as would be traditional.
Right, that's what I mean. It's not the...
It's this, guys, you would never know where it is.
It's not the big black tank we see on
you will never know where
there.
it is. And I won't tell you where it is, but it is on site, right? Okay. So we have that. Separately, standby generator. Right. Typical of a lot of developments now, you will have a standby generator, but it only accommodates the common areas, lighting for the common areas. But in terms of our development that we're doing now, you will get a standby generator that goes into your unit and gives power to your refrigerator and power to your bedroom and so on. Just to note, as a developer, if he's going 4 stories or more, there's a new regulation now by the fire department, And that developer now has to put in a fire suppression system in order to get his plan approved. So that's like a sprinkler system. So the more you go as a developer now, the regulations will basically be adjusted, and you have to be able to stay in the know as a developer with the local authorities to ensure that you are not breaching any of the regulations that they have set up.
Wow, that's really a lot of information, but I know we have more coming, right?
Absolutely.
So stay with us, there's more Home Sweet Home after the break. Welcome back to Home Sweet Home. We're still talking with Raymond Grant about his Gladstone Drive development and, of course, from concept to completion of this project. Now, you've touched on this a little in one of your previous answers, but I've always heard about the number of approvals you have to get before starting a development. Give us a little more about that.
It's a very complicated process, but for those of us who know and understand, you may see a development as an individual from the aspect of the construction. It may be a year, maybe 2 years, but prior to getting that construction started, there is a approvals process that starts from the developer acquires, prepares his drawings, submits them to the whichever respective local authority depending on the parish that he is in. If you are a developer doing 9 units or less, then you will just submit your plans directly to the KCAC and be approved from the KCAC only. If you're doing 10 units or more, when you submit to the KCAC, those plans are forwarded to the National Environment and Plan Agency. They're scrutinized more in terms of the process, because NEPA then in turn circulates these plans to a lot of other agencies, as much as 12 additional agencies, to assess sewage, to assess your parking, to assess your ingress egress for your cars coming in, different aspects. They go to the Mines and Geology Division to assess your rock formation. So there's a complete process that goes on for the approvals, and depending on what information you provided in your application and depending on the type of design that you have, they may require additional information, additional testing, soil tests. So a lot goes into that aspect of just that aspect of the process.
We just did the construction.
You just did the construction and think that's it. Good.
A long time coming.
And then separately and apart from that, when you actually get an approval by the local authority, you then have to assess what was approved and assess your certificate of title to see if you need to modify any of the covenants on your certificate of title. And that process is a process that goes through the Supreme Courts. And that is a minimum of 90 days by itself. When you go through that process, provided that you get approved by the courts to make changes or modifications to accommodate development, then you would go to the real estate board to get approved by the real estate board. And for us as developers, we endeavor to get approved by the real estate board because that is the time when we can actually engage purchasers and get deposits from purchasers and so on. And those deposits are protected by the act under which the real estate board operates. So in terms of that process where you have the local authorities coming up the line, essentially making sure that everything is, you know, how it is supposed to be, we come right up onto the point where we have our full set of approvals, and then we engage and get into the aspect of construction.
Based on how comprehensive that process is, it would seem that you need a lot of people, a lot of professionals here to assist with the development.
Absolutely. We start off essentially by engaging a physical planner, an urban planner, somebody who understands density, understands what we are able to get as a developer, having conducted our own market research, where sometimes we have to hire a market research firm to make that determination as to what is best for the area, what is best, what is the demand now on the market, and so on. So we have an architect that we would engage, and then we have engineers and not just a civil engineer in terms of the design for the building, in terms of the structural integrity of the building, but we also have mechanical, electrical, and plumbing engineers.
Oh, wow.
They're called MEPs, that do specific designs for each building, each unit, to ensure that, for example, on the electrical engineering aspect, the loads that are being generated can be handled based on the system that is designed. So, for example, our developments bring in a certain amount of standby electricity to each unit, requires us specing a larger grade standby generator as opposed to if we were just providing common area lighting. The electrical aspect of it is tied into the plumbing as well. So our plumbing engineer sets up that system for us, because we know that above 2 floors we are not getting more than 50 psi in terms of the water pressure for the units. So we have to have a specific system design that is able to provide a certain amount of water pressure for units as you go 3-4 floors up. So these professionals, in terms of the design aspect, they also work together to bring that design to life. Then separately and apart, we have to have our land surveyor that assesses in terms of our boundary surveys or topographic surveys. They set up the levels in terms of how we're going to set up the floor level for the building, because the land may not be flat. And also that surveyor does what is called a strata plan. So when the units are complete in an apartment complex, that surveyor comes in and prepares a plan to capture all those units, right? So that we can get the title splintered to generate individual titles for the new units. And that's where the attorney at law also comes in to undertake the modification process that I had mentioned earlier. So the attorney at law would undertake, of course, aspects of the acquisition of the property, and then throughout the process, in terms of the contracts with the potential purchasers, in terms of doing the strata aspect, getting the parent title splintered and so on. So we have the attorney at law engaged there. In addition to that, we also have the quantity surveyor, who is the QS, as we call him. The quantity surveyor, they assess the cost of the building in terms of blocks, sand, cement, gravel, labor, materials, and all those essentials. So when the architect designs a plan, then we put that plan over to the quantity surveyor, and the quantity surveyor will say, okay, this is the cost. This is the cost to build, and it includes every nail and screw for the building. This is an example for the project that we are now of quantities for this project and what it entails. It's a huge document, and like I said, it includes all the essentials of the project. It covers every aspect from where construction is concerned. So all the costs for the project are contained in here. So this is our budget for the project. It's a process where the professionals work in stages, sometimes together, and that is an essential part, because you have to get that gel in order to get that finish. So in terms of what we have been able to achieve so far, we have a team that works on different projects on different times. So they are able now to understand, persons can engage, because when you find one issue, for example for the plumber, at times that issue is going to affect the electrician. And the solution for the plumber may also mean that the electrician is going to have to make adjustments as well. And sometimes we have to bring our architects on site as we go through to find some solutions, because that's really the nature of construction.
Don't go anywhere. Home Sweet Home will be right back.
Welcome back to Home Sweet Home. We're still talking with Raymond Grant about his Gladstone Drive development from concept to completion. And I now want to get into site prep. What does that involve?
Okay, the site prep is the aspect of the project where we take possession of the site to commence activities, but not the actual construction.
Right.
So what we do in that regard is we scope the site, we decide where we're going to be setting up our site office, we decide where we're going to be setting up our work amenities, right? In terms of our power supply that we may need to upgrade to accommodate the site works, water supply as well, in terms of how much we're going to need, is there a connection existing already, is it sufficient to meet the demands that we're going to have on the site. In this case, luckily, there was a 4-bedroom house that had galvanized sheets in terms of the roofing. So what we were able to do was to deconstruct the house, remove the roofing, and use that roofing to create the hoarding that's necessary to create privacy and to prevent and reduce some of the nuisance to the neighbors and so on in terms of the construction with dust and noise and so on. So we were able to utilize in terms of the deconstruction, because some persons would think that you just go and you bulldoze a house down and you're gone, you know, on your merry way, but that's really not the process. So we start with deconstruction, stripping the house, getting out things that can be reused on other locations or so on. The roof, if it can be removed, remove the roof and so on. We have reused some of the burglar bars from the house on the container here. Some of the cupboards from the house we have reused. And in terms of the work amenity space, the water closets, the face basins and so on, we have reused most of those back for the workers, right? So our workers, because from time to time we have workers that come from out of town that have to sleep on site. So we ensure that they have good facilities in terms of how they operate and so on. So there's a benefit of using that process on your bottom dollar essentially. And then we set up our hoarding, simultaneously setting up our electricals. In this case, we had to set up a utility pole, relocate the meter from the house, set it up on the pole, and we actually brought in the containers that we are in now, believe it or not. And this was set up from scratch, where we got this container and we set it up to operate as our office. God, this is nice, right? Far site. In here?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Once you have completed the deconstruction process, then we move to the demolition. The demolition process requires scoping out what you have to do, how many days is going to take, type of equipment that you're going to be needing to actually do that. Because yes, you can bring in, for example, a 950 bulldozer and you hit down the house, but then you have the foundation of the house to remove to accommodate the new development that you're going to be putting in. So that requires the ability to scope it out, understanding what's at stake. For example, if you're bringing in trucks into a residential area to remove debris from your demolition, those trucks cannot be running at times when in the early mornings you have neighbors who are getting ready for work and so on. So we kind of set the time frame for those activities on the slower parts of the day, when the trucks can move from site down to Riverton and back again, to reduce the nuisance to the neighbors as much as possible. So we, in that demolition process, of course, we excavate the foundation of the existing property and we strip the site totally and make the site ready. So the prepping of the site essentially gets the site ready to commence construction, which would be the cutting of your foundations, right, to commence your new building.
Now, what happens when it rains? The construction has to stop, and does that affect anything that you are constructing?
Funny you ask that question, because when we just about started, there was some heavy rains in November of 2016, and we had to basically put a hold on operations for about a week and a half. But I'm happy to say that now we're actually 2 weeks ahead of schedule.
Oh, lovely.
Right, and part of the reason for that is that we can pace ourselves based on when certain, we call it acts of God, like rain or if there was to be an earthquake or so on would happen. What we do is we can choose to focus on aspects of the job that do not necessarily require physical presence on the site. So you can go into more detailed planning in terms of your aspects of your engineering again, or aspects of your architecture. In terms of your finishing, you can go about ordering, doing calculations to determine how many tiles you're going to need, how many materials you're going to need to finish certain aspects of the job. So even though the site may physically come to a halt, the project is still running, essentially, right? So what we do is our schedule that we have here captures all the aspects of the activities from the site prep that we mentioned all the way down to handing over of the units.
Raymond, thank you so much for giving us a more comprehensive understanding of what goes into the construction of a development.
You're welcome.
But I know there are other processes, so we will be back to hear more from you.
Certainly.
There is still so much more to be done to this development happening here on Gladstone Drive. Until next time, I'm Candy for Home Sweet Home.